Hey everyone, this is Steve from Average Joe's underscore FF, and I've got my co-host Johnny freaking F1, and we are representing the beautiful IDP guys who are just absolutely amazing. We got some great stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the schedule. We're going to talk about some free agent signings that happened after the draft that may have some implications for your fantasy, and of course, we're going to again give you a great show to talk about a lot of fun stuff. How are you doing, Johnny? Having a good night?
I'm having a great night, man. I'm having a great off season here with football. I got fantasy baseball running. I'm doing some mock drafts too. So I've been busy dropping a lot of videos, and I hear you've been doing the same. You've been doing a lot of great work, and I've had the pleasure to read and study up on some of that too. So thanks for the insight.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've had a couple articles come out for IDP. We talked about quarterback rankings and wide receiver rankings and kind of where we stand right now when it comes to dynasty and of course implementing the rookies. And I've been I don't know, my 20th, I think, rookie draft has been completed so far. I don't want to admit that, but it's true. And another thing is look, I know we're talking football. I know this isn't on the subject, but I'm a big Boston fan. So Celtics and Bruins have been keeping me busy during these playoffs. So it has been stressing me out. I can't lose any more hair, but maybe I can. I don't know. But that's been great. Before we get into the schedule, because the NFL schedule has been released, and there were some great teams that had some great releases. I don't know if you got to check any out. There were some really funny ones. There were some that kind of had some head scratchers, but with that said, look, draft season is here. It's coming closer and closer, especially for redraft season. And look, get ahead of the game. Right now with Trophy Smack, there's some great stuff. They've got some great draft boards complete with player stickers, players you probably won't even draft this upcoming season. So you have plenty of players there. And for the first time, Trophy Smack does have an IDP expansion for all of us defensive IDP nerds out there. So in the show notes, check out that link. Make sure you guys obviously get your draft boards ready, whether it be for your dynasty startups or, of course, any redraft stuff that's going to be happening this upcoming season. So make sure you guys click on that. So schedule wise, let's get right into this. We're not going to deep dive every single week. I don't think we both need to talk about it, but I wanted to mention the schedule as far as how this is going to help you guys with your fantasy this upcoming season. A couple things that you've got to concern yourself with especially when it comes to redraft. Dynasty is a little different. You're not going to make any adjustments to that. But if we're talking redraft with the bye weeks in week 12 and week 14 are going to be brutal this upcoming season, especially for week 14. Week 14, most people are probably running their playoffs, which means you're going to have 6 teams that will not be playing at all on the first playoff. So you better hope you have a bye week or something happening. And there's some big names. You've got the Ravens, the Broncos, Texans, Colts, Patriots, Commanders. So there's some pretty good teams that will not be playing that week that can absolutely tear up your fantasy hopes at all. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's anything I remember of a season like that where, especially in the playoffs, that we're dealing with bye weeks. I don't know if you can remember anything like that, Johnny.
No, man, it doesn't come to mind. This is unprecedented times here in the NFL and fantasy.
Yeah, I just think the NFL, I think, realizes they don't like fantasy football. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. Maybe they just don't like fantasy football because this is, you know, I will say I don't know how you are when it comes to redraft. I'm not a guy who drafts based off of bye weeks. I kind of figure
No,
that out after the fact.
right.
I have shot myself in the foot a few times because of it. But, this is something that I think strategically it's something we may have to consider when you're looking into this upcoming season.
Sure.
Any thoughts?
You know what? Yes and no. I'll run it both ways. Part of me is like, yeah, absolutely. You don't want to be, not only are you in the playoffs now and you're losing some key players, you might be fighting for, that week 12 bye creeps up. You might be fighting for a playoff spot and then you don't have those guys. So part of me saying, yes, absolutely. You want to kind of draft around that week 12, week 14 bye because of that. But at the same time, if you're somebody who's checking their lineup very active, making a lot of trades, if you're somebody who can flip and flop guys like that, then to me, I'm not concerned about it still, because I'm still going to, if I need to, if I have a great team, hey, I'll take the L that week, in week 12, things are looking good. But at the same time, yeah, I'll make some trades. I'll get those guys hot now and then trade them before their bye week approaches. So there's many ways to dive into this, and it's going to be, like I said, unprecedented time, and be interesting to see what I come up with coming into the season this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't think about trading as a way to kind of avoid bye weeks or kind of combat what could happen. I will say week 12, looking at the rosters that are going to be out, I mean, you're going to have Josh Allen, Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, like Derek Carr. I mean, there's some great quarterbacks that you'll be missing out when it comes to week 12, which I
Right.
think is huge. I mean, quarterback is such an important piece to a lot of fantasy teams. So I thought that was pretty big. So yeah, I mean, the strategy might be a little different for some folks this upcoming season just because of the bye weeks. Again, something that I've never really considered, but you got to think about how are you going to be able to get that leg up on the competition. I think sometimes you have to look at that strategy. I'm not one, like, for example, most of my redrafts, I'm typically just one quarterback, so I'm not rostering another quarterback, so it's not as bad. But if you're in a super flex, you might have some issues coming into week 12 and 14, especially like you mentioned, if you're a team that's on the edge of possibly making the playoffs. Man, that's some brutal weeks right there.
And at the same time, I mean, some trade, me personally, if I'm running a league, if I'm the commissioner, which I am in a couple, I turn trade deadline off, because I think that's, and people will say too, you don't want to be trading too close to the playoffs, but at the same time, if there's two teams that can get something done and it doesn't hurt the league, it's not screwing over anybody, I don't have a problem with it. If you can still make trades up to that point and walk away with happy with what you got, so be it. So know your scoring, know your settings, and let that kind of help you guide of which way you want to, take this bye week action this year.
Yeah, and I'm kind of mixed when it comes to trades. I think trades are a great thing to have, especially in Dynasty. I don't think trade deadlines should exist because Dynasty is a little unique, right? Redraft definitely has some strategy if you do keep the deadline active, because if you have a deadline there, man, that is some fun, week or two before the deadline ends. You got a lot of fun stuff going on there.
And maybe if you're listening to this and you're a
Yeah.
commissioner, maybe you want to think about that too with your league. Send a vote out. Hey, this is going to be different time this year, different situation where we have a lot of buys later in the year. Do we want to keep trades open and maybe alleviate some of that stress from owners, or do you want to play hardball and say, hey, week 10, week 12, it is what it is?
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're not trading, you're not trying. That's kind of how I feel. So, I mean, I like the idea of having, like I said, a no trade deadline in Dynasty. I do for fun, because I think what makes redraft kind of exciting is that I do have a trade deadline. So, like, you've got to be strategic when it comes to that stuff and thinking about it. A couple of other things I wanted to mention, like, when I looked at the schedule, and we're not talking particular matchups, but I thought it was interesting. So this coming season, you've got 4 Monday nights. They're going to be at least a doubleheader. Like, I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, I know they've done in the past where there's usually a couple teams playing on a Monday night, usually like the first week of the NFL season, maybe one other later on, but they're going to be 4 Monday night. And again, for entertainment purposes, I think that's great. I mean, it's kind of frustrating when you do have two teams playing, one at 7, one at 8, and you got to figure out which one you're going to watch, especially as a fantasy fan. But I will say, as a fantasy fan, you do have to consider, short weeks, and we always are looking for that Monday night miracle. So I thought that was kind of interesting this year too. I think they've definitely made a different type of schedule than they have in the past.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I play in leagues too where I've decided weeks literally based on, like, I remember one week it was maybe week 8 this past year. Michael Mayer played on a Monday, and I literally didn't have a kicker, didn't have a tight end, because I wanted to stash Keaton Mitchell, some other guys too. So I went into that week with no kicker, with no tight end, but I knew that Michael Mayer and the Raiders played on Monday. So what I did is I waited it out. One of those stash players I had fizzled. They didn't perform like I wanted them to. I ended up dropping them Sunday night to pick up Michael Mayer, and that helped me get that win. So now I have 2 games to look for on Monday. It's not just one matchup. So that kind of helps me in that sense of strategy if you're playing very nitty gritty like I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it will be fun. Like I said, I looked at the schedule. The only complaint that I have, I mean, in my case, I've got, a couple options of having two different games on, but not everybody can do that or want to do that. So, obviously you're going to watch your favorite team or maybe the more entertaining team. But when it comes to fantasy, having two teams going on can be a little chaotic and stuff you got to remember to do and make sure you're scheduled unless you're playing like best ball or something. And then the other thing, and this actually it affects you as a fan. So the week of Christmas is interesting. So you've got we're talking playoffs now. You got week 16 and week 17. Week 16 is on a Saturday. You've got four teams playing on that Saturday: the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Texans, and Ravens. And then 3 days later, or 4 days later, with 3 days of rest, you have them playing on Christmas Day. So that is going to be very interesting because they've never done that before. And where the interesting factor is you're talking week 17 is that Christmas Day game. Anything can happen in 3 days in those type of I mean, you got late season, you got recovery from injuries. These players are, human too. They've got holidays to deal with. There's a lot of factors that can affect them. So like your championship week now has to deal with four teams that now have some effect to them. And I thought, man, what a way to just, again, the NFL just does not want the NFL, like the fantasy aspect in this, because having only 3 days of rest at that late in the season, I can only imagine what these players are going through.
And let's say, knock on wood, if the Steelers are, 6-11 or 6-10 at that point, now they play the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are first seed, unanimous. Do the Chiefs bench their players? Is that going to mess with, Patrick Mahomes and company? I don't know. So these things could happen. Now the NFL probably put them there because they're thinking they're likely to have a reason to continue playing, continue starting their starters, and hopefully that's the case. But if not, it's going to throw a wrench in our plans as fantasy owners for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is a factor. And I think, I just think of injuries. Like, what if like Travis Kelce twists his ankle on that Saturday game, right?
Right.
Normally, if it's not too bad, he can come back the next Sunday game and, show up and play. 3 days later, I don't know if he's going to end up playing, right? Like you got to like those are the type of things that I think about. Like all it takes is one of these athletes to just do something, that in a normal case they can heal up or at least deal with the pain a week later. But when you're talking 3 days only of rest, especially that late in the season, like if it were talking like the early on of the season, these guys are fresh, the bodies aren't as beat up, they could possibly go through that without any issues. But when you're talking 16 weeks into the season, your body's beat up, you're dealing with injuries, nicks here and there, and then you twist something or whatever the case may be, and then you guys show up 3 days later. You obviously want to play on Christmas Day. That's something big. They're trying to show up, the NBA, but that's tough to do. And in now you're talking the championship week of fantasy. Man, that's brutal.
Right. Plus, does the team want to send out Travis Kelce with a twisted ankle, if they have playoffs the next following week? So it's like, man, it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I looking at the schedule, I thought it was fun. I'm excited. I mean, again, it's just inching us closer and closer to the NFL season. It's that little bit of tease that the NFL gave us. But looking at this schedule, this upcoming season, it's probably the most different I've seen in a long time by the NFL, which is it's exciting. I feel like it's gonna be football almost every day, which is great news for us football fans. But thinking as a commissioner, thinking of someone who like all of us, we give content out to help give the best fantasy advice as we can as, analysts when it comes to this stuff. It's going to be a interesting season coming forward.
Yeah, for sure. I think managers, commissioners, we all have tough decisions, tough ideas to juggle. So it's going to be interesting. But at the same time, I think it's more strategic because now we talk about these different innuendos when it comes to draft. So I like that personally. I like the deeper the league, anything to, more trades, anything to give me a competitive edge over my competitors. I'll take. I'll rise up to that challenge. So I'm excited for this one too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So the schedule, again, you guys obviously check it out. And if you haven't watched any of this stuff, I'm sure everyone's probably listening to this or watching this has already seen their favorite teams and the schedules. So we're going to obviously talk about some players. the draft has ended. There's mini camps going on. People doing mock drafts, people doing rookie drafts. There's a lot of great stuff. But I want to talk about some free agent players that have signed recently, this past month that I think could have some relevancy in fantasy, or they're just some big names that maybe, again, like if you're Johnny who's got a deep league that you've got a lot of spots to fill, you might want to stash. So before we talk about that, look, we're not just pretty faces. I mean, well, maybe we just are, but at IDP Plus, look, we've got some great tools, great articles, great podcasts, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff to help you guys with your upcoming season and going forward. And especially when it comes to the defensive side, which is where we want to stand out as a company. We're here for you guys. And with that said, make sure you guys sign up on our website. Go to idpguys.org. Your first month, when you sign up, go to checkout, hit mock draft, and it's $1 for the first month. Nothing costs $1 anymore. Use that $1, sign up on the website, get some great information. A lot of great articles are out there. Again, make sure you guys obviously sign up there, subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast, get information like Johnny and I are giving you to help you guys with this upcoming season. So when you win, we'd like a high five when you come back into the comment section and say thank you guys. So again, make sure you guys check out mock draft. It's $1 for the first month. I guarantee you will be here beyond 1 month. So free agents. We both we got a list here together. We talked about some of these players. We'll talk a little bit offense first. So I thought this was a funny signing. It has no relevancy at all, but I had to put him in there. Rashaad Penny. Like that poor man, Rashaad Penny, is now on his third, fourth team. I don't remember it is now at this point. Signed with the Panthers, which, let's be honest, Rashaad Penny is going to be cut when the season starts. The Panthers have Chuba Hubbard, they've got Miles Sanders, and then of course they drafted Jonathan Brooks. But we had to mention him. Thoughts on Rashaad Penny? I mean, there were some truthers out there.
He will forever live in my brain for that one season he had, the potential, the fantasy star potential he had in Seattle. But for me, yeah, I think it's far too gone. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a chance somewhere and had a nice game or two if he's got the chance. And it's going to give people a lot of false hope. But yeah, I think this one's smoke. I don't think it will be fantasy relevant anytime in the near future.
Yeah, the truthers at this point are just blind if they're still believing in him. I actually have not checked to see if Sleeper, if anybody, like how many ads, they always put how many times people have, players trending. But I had to mention him because he did get signed. Good for him. I mean, obviously it sucks because he's constantly dealt with injuries because he definitely was a very talented back. He had signs of it, but at this point, signing with the Panthers does nothing for him, does nothing for the Carolina Panthers. But I definitely had to mention it. Another player which I think could have some relevancy in fantasy is Tyler Boyd. He signed with the Tennessee Titans. And I don't know, like I think about this, like Tyler Boyd signing with them was a big deal because maybe it says more about Treylon Burks than it does with Tyler Boyd. Because you've got obviously now Calvin Ridley, you got still DeAndre Hopkins, you have Treylon Burks, but then you sign Tyler Boyd, who is a great wide receiver 3 on any team. I mean, he's been like that for the Bengals. So what are your thoughts on that signing? Like, do you think this is more like, hey, we wanted to get a really good vet, or do you think, man, Burks isn't the guy?
You know what? I think it's a mixture of both. I don't think that Treylon Burks is they want to surround good pass catchers there, and he's a little bit unproven himself. And I think he could have done fine. I didn't think they needed to go out and sign Tyler Boyd, but at the same time, he's a veteran. And bottom line, you're not going to need him to be your number one receiver. He's going to bring veteran knowledge, experience into that locker room, into Will Levis. And I think that's a good move. They shored up the offensive and defensive lines. Not sexy picks, but they did the right things in the offseason. Now they bring in a veteran leader like Tyler Boyd, who's been on successful teams. He's been on teams that have great wide receiving core, all that. So I think that his experience is definitely a good attribute addition to this team. And for all those people out there who know Tyler Boyd, who can relate it with Clairton, PA. I respect you. I salute you because that's, it's 15 minutes away from where I grew up in Pittsburgh. But, one thing I know about Tyler Boyd, and this is a crazy take, and this is some inside information. I know I follow him on Snapchat, And I know Tyler Boyd is a big Key Glock. I'm a rap guy. I listen to a lot of rap. He's a big fan of Key Glock. He was a big fan of Young Dolph before he died. It got shot. So maybe, going to Tennessee, these guys were from Tennessee. So I don't know if this is more of like I like the lifestyle kind of signing. I thought for sure he was going to sign with Pittsburgh. Wasn't the case. I was a little bit upset about that. I think he would have been a great ad for us. But you know what? I don't know. There's more to it than what we know. Maybe it's a little bit of the lifestyle too. But I definitely think on a football aspect, it's a good real life signing for the Titans, and I hope Tyler Boyd is a fantasy rosterable.
Yeah, I mean, in Dynasty, I still think he has a little bit of value to hold on to. It's a very veteran locker room. You got Hop, you got Boyd, you got, Ridley. Like, that's a really good trio. I don't think that's a bad wide receiver room at all. I mean, you could put them easily in the top 15 teams as far as a trio of receivers.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe Burks needs this. Maybe Burks needs this to kind of realize, like, man, they added Ridley. Okay, I get that. Then you add Boyd. All right, maybe there's something to it. And I think, look, I was never high on Treylon Burks at all. I especially when that draft class came in, I didn't think he was the best receiver, but he was drafted really high. I saw so many people go after him. But maybe you got a deep league. Maybe you got a nice little third round pick kind of sitting there. Just want to go after Treylon Burks. Maybe this is a year he needs to sit and learn from these guys to potentially really develop into the receiver he should be. But yeah, I think the Boyd move is a good move. I think, again, they're trying to do everything they can to get weapons for Will Levis. And this is a nut up or shut up type of moment for Will Levis. Like, this is like, hey, I know it's our sophomore year, but you got to show something,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be big. Another player that we're going to talk about that got signed that I think has some fantasy implications is Robert Tonyan, the tight end signed for the Vikings. And you and I were talking off screen that I think this is more about what has to do with TJ Hawkinson and his injury. Like, I think this is like a safety net. You get a player that has shown signs, like he played pretty well. He's with Green Bay. Not really much since when he left, but you got a player that could have some value. And the fact is I think it's more of a security blanket than it is for anything else. I mean, I don't know how fantasy wise he's going to really, maybe have a game or two, like Soul Streamer, but like, man, it kind of gives you some worrisome news when it comes to TJ Hawkinson this upcoming season.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely think that Tonyan, if Hawkinson misses a couple games, could be somebody. We have a rookie quarterback, maybe, and McCarthy going to start, maybe. But rookie quarterbacks like to tend to look at their tight ends, so this might be maybe not just a replacement and get by. This might be a fantasy impactful stream. When we talked about guys last year, Hunter Henry's, Jonnu Smith's, those kind of guys, maybe this is a caliber, that type of caliber that Tonyan can be. We've seen him had success in Green Bay. Obviously that was a few years ago, but he's not hanging on by a thread. He's still in his 20s, I believe, and I think there's a little bit of room to improve for him. And I was a little bit of surprised to see him, get pushed away by Green Bay. I thought he earned himself some looks there. So they moved on pretty quickly, and I think he could land on his feet here.
Yeah, I mean, again, you got to have a backup plan when it comes to injuries. Hawkinson definitely had a severe injury late last season, so it's not like it's something he can. It wasn't like first week of the season he's got a fresh new year. Like, he's got some stuff to deal with. No, I'm not saying go after Robert Tonyan and make him a number one waiver claim, but he is somebody you may want to have, especially if you have Hawk on your team, in your dynasty team, because you may need a backup plan. Because the expected point, I mean, I definitely don't expect him week one. I think Hawk can miss. He might maybe come in at week 5. He might even come in at week 8. Who knows? We'll see how things play out. Another player that was signed. So the Bills signed 2 wide receivers, which I thought was interesting, right? Like, I get it. They got rid of a lot of players this offseason, especially on the receiving side. They did get Keon Coleman, which, if you guys have been watching this for a while, know I'm a huge fan of. But they signed MVS and they signed Chase Claypool, your favorite receiver, Johnny. Which, again, I think they're just trying to add some potential weapons. I think these are guys that could be some training camp cuts. but they're bringing in some guys who have been in the league who I think could have some value for this Buffalo team. I do think Buffalo is going to be more run heavy than ever before. But what are your thoughts of MVS and Chase Claypool coming in over to Buffalo?
You know what? I don't look too much into those names right now. I think they're just guys. You know, we look at a deep wide receiver room as it is. I really like Keon Coleman too. I back him 100%. I think he'll be the wide receiver one, and that goes a little bit into my take with those guys. They also have Curtis Samuel there too. Khalil Shakir did well. I actually liked Quintez Cephas from Detroit. He signed there, but then just got cut a few days ago. I thought they got it right with that pick. I thought that was like, a deep name who could still have some value. He was only 26 years old. They actually cut him and brought in these two guys. I like Cephas more, but he's obviously not there anymore. I'm looking to see where he lands on his feet. Maybe he could have a role for some team, but yeah, Marquez Valdes-Scantling specifically. When I think of him, man, it's the dangling the carrot over my head that never came to fruition. You know, it's you always look at the potential. He'll have that 18, 20-point game, hit a home run, be a weekly waiver wire gem, and then he's back to the free agents next week. So I'm willing to be proven wrong on this one.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of like Claypool had that really good season for Pittsburgh, and then he kind of just disappeared. I think he got in his own way. I think Claypool is very talented, but I think he definitely got in his own way. And I think, I mean, maybe this is what he needs. I mean, he went to Miami. Miami wasn't really suitable for him. I think Claypool is very similar play style to Keon Coleman. I think body style, the way they both play. So I think both of these guys actually could end up just being cut because I like the room that they have now. Keon Coleman, Shakir, Curtis Samuel. I think those guys are great. You still have Dawson Knox. You still have Kincaid. Like, I don't think they needed to add these guys, but like anything else, a lot of these teams bring in vets to kind of just, again, breed competition, get the best out of these players. So as far as fantasy goes, very irrelevant. Like, these guys have no relevancy at all when it comes to that. Now, one player I do think, and I think you and I both agree, Zay Jones signing with the Cardinals, I think could have some fantasy implications. I think it's a great move for Arizona. Zay has shown great potential. I mean, granted, he's had to deal with some injuries. He showed he can play well in Jacksonville. He did it in, the Raiders. Like, he's got some ability to really shine. And now, my only gripe, and this is where it hurt me, is I'm a big Michael Wilson fan, and I have him in a few of my leagues. And when they signed Zay Jones, it just like, man, what does that mean about Michael Wilson? Because I thought Michael Wilson would have been a great sleeper for this upcoming season, opposite of Marvin Harrison Jr. And now it's like, man, does Michael Wilson become the third, and then Zay becomes the two? Because I think Zay has the ability to be the two, and I think that's where I think this value is. I think Zay could actually be a sneaky play coming into the season.
And you know what? Kind of like his role last year with the Jags. I mean, he had weeks where he was the number 2 receiver. You know, he was putting up 7, 8 targets, red zone looks. And I think that's one thing that I'm banking on is getting some red zone looks. And for a team like the Cardinals, man, we talk about Kyler Murray as being a top 10 dynasty quarterback. I just look at this one stat when I think of Kyler Murray. This is like the big red flag I see in the room. 2022, so this is not the past season, but 2 seasons ago, in 11 games, he only threw for 14 touchdowns. In 2023, this past season now, in 8 games, he's thrown 10 touchdowns. So that's barely over 1 touchdown a game. To me, in fantasy, doesn't get it done. Maybe this is an avenue to help them, score more receiving touchdowns. And that's why I like Zay Jones. I think he's a red zone factor. I kind of wrote him off before, and I've been wrong before. So, last year with the Jags was real. And, unfortunately, injuries kind of ravaged his season. But I think that he can make it. This is definitely a team that needs targets. And he's definitely someone who can command targets. He's not a, one catch Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 1 catch, 50 yards and a touchdown. This is a volume and red zone receiver. So I think there's real, fantasy potential to be had here. Perhaps as the number 2 receiver. He might go do number 2, number 3, fluctuate like that, a little bit inconsistent. But hey, when there's Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison, him, or Greg Dortch, I'm banking on him. So I do like Zay Jones, and I think especially in deeper leagues, this is a name who's going to make an appearance in waivers this year.
Yeah, he has a lot of Gabe Davis vibes. Like Zay will have amazing games and he'll get targeted more than the wide receiver one on the team. And then there's some games he just doesn't show up. Like that's kind of his play style, kind of like Gabe Davis did, for Buffalo, and now for Jacksonville. We'll see. But I do like Zay Jones. I thought it was a good move because he does have talent. He's a good receiver. I just think I don't know, maybe it's the coaching, maybe it's something, but his inconsistency is what again holds him back. Another receiver is I think it's just a name, but his name brings a lot, is Odell signing with Miami. I don't think there's any value. I didn't think he really had a lot of great value last season for Baltimore. He had a couple good games, but nothing that's worth really stashing. Maybe if you have a deep roster, has absolutely zero redraft implications, but it's a signing that matters. I think for him, he wanted to get there with Jalen Ramsey. They're both, really, really close. He could have something, right? You got Tyreek, you got Waddle. Maybe you throw in Odell here or there. Like again, he might have that one game where he puts up 8 receptions, 100 yards, and a touchdown. You're like, oh, is he back? And everyone gets excited, and everyone's grabbing him on waivers. And then the rest of the season, he might have 20 catches. That's the kind of season he could possibly have. But it is still a big name that in the NFL world that I felt like it was a big deal to still add him in this free agents kind of signing. How do you feel about Odell?
I think it's good depth for sure for the Miami Dolphins. I'm not really expecting too much in fantasy either. Definitely not somebody who I'm looking at in redraft or counting on to start the year. But hey, injuries are happening. Tyreek Hill's over 30, well over 30 now, and now Jalen Waddle had some injuries to deal with. I mean, even with the 2 rookies they have, Washington and I forget the other one. The 2 rookies they drafted in this past draft. I mean, I like them both as stashes because I think at some point, unfortunately, you have to, you can't bank on injury, but it's likely going to happen, between one of these receivers. So I do expect the number 3 receiver, even though they only really throw to 1 and 2. I still think there's going to be weeks where injuries happen that, number 2 or number 3 becomes number 2 by default and everyone else moves up a peg. So maybe that can be Odell. Maybe that can be one of the rookies, but whoever it is, I think the number 3 receiver there is going to make some noise when their time is called.
Yeah, and they pass enough that I think they can make up, a few targets here or there.
Right.
And the last receiver or / last offensive player that we'll talk about before we talk about a couple defensive players can be DJ Chark signing with the Chargers. I thought that was a good move, right? Chargers need some players. I don't expect the Chargers to be a pass heavy type of scheme. I think they're changing that with Harbaugh there. I think they're going to go more into the heavy run. But look at that roster. You look at the receiving core. They're very young now. With losing Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, it's a very young. I think they're vets now are DJ Chark and Palmer.
Right.
Like those are the 2 that have been in the league for a while because you've got, McConkey, right? You got Quentin Johnston. I mean, you've got some guys who definitely are going to need those veterans there. So I thought that was a good move for DJ Chark. I don't think there's going to be a lot of fantasy relevancy. I'm nervous for the receiving core when it comes to it, just because I do think they're going to run a lot. I don't know if they're just trying to keep Herbert healthy and upright and, just kind of help him out. But I thought it's a good signing. I thought it was good for their roster for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's good sign. Help the young guys out, veteran depth again. This might be a hot take, but to me, I'm taking my hand out of the Chargers pass catchers this year completely. Right now, Lad McConkey, his price you're going to have to pay, to me, it's high. I don't know what I'm going to get. I do expect him to be a safe target share, like a safe floor type of player right off the bat. So limit the upside. I don't see too much upside there. And you've got Quentin Johnson. I mean, I'd be willing to take a stab on him, especially in Dynasty if it's later. I'm not overlooking him just yet. But at the same time, now you have other receivers that need the ball too. Josh Palmer can still get his. So just too many wide receivers. Now you have DJ Chark. And I saw some people on Twitter, talk about DJ Chark maybe making a resurrection there. It might happen. He had some great years, and he's not. I don't even think he's 30 yet. But to me, I'm not banking on it. I'm not predicting it at all. I'm just taking my hand out of the pot when it's a run first team too. They're bringing Harbaugh back. I mean, he's poached some guys off his brother's team for Baltimore, and I think it's going to be a run heavy team. And I don't expect anyone really to step up and be a fantasy wide receiver one.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. We could be week 6 right now talking, and all of a sudden DJ Chark's the number 1 waiver wire to grab because he could have that type of potential. But there's a lot of wait and see when it comes to this roster, when it comes to the receiving core, because there are a lot of new guys, new scheme. It's definitely one that you're not like. I don't think of all these players, none of them I'm drafting and redraft like at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the Quinn Johnston move. I have him as one of my buys, one of my favorite buys this offseason, because I think you can get him at a cheap price, and I think he could turn it around where your value of a 3rd round pick you won't feel bad doing it,
Right.
So, all right. So before we talk about some defensive players, look, again, if we're talking defense, we are IDB plus, and one of the things we want to mention is our rookie guide is out there. It is something that is being updated constantly through the offseason, constantly going on to give you guys any advantage to help you, whether it be redraft or dynasty. So make sure we are still at a limited price tag of $9.99 right now to download our live up-to-date rookie guide to help you guys out. And again, we're updating it every Friday. You've got obviously mini camp news and training camp news and all kinds of fun stuff to help you guys with your rookie drafts, or again, your redraft season. And maybe there's some rookies that came into this league this upcoming season that will help you guys out that maybe your league mates don't know. So if you aren't subscribed, using that mock draft in the checkout for $1, at least sign up and get our $9.99 right now rookie guide. So make sure you guys are signing up for that as well. So defense, there's not as many signings. We've got a few players here, and the first one is Deion Jones signing with Buffalo, the linebacker. And I think part of it could just be a signing to help with some of the linebacker issues, health-wise, like Milano obviously being out, just to kind of get a veteran presence in there. Deion Jones has shown signs like he played for my Cowboys recently, and I liked the signing when he was there. And then obviously, he's no longer with us because Deion Jones was an amazing linebacker for the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously he's up there in age, but I thought that was a decent signing. And I think it's more so just a backup plan depending on how Milano does this upcoming offseason.
Yeah, I like it too, especially NFL team wise, not so much fantasy. They tend to play 2 linebackers there in Buffalo. So for me, I really like Milano. I really like Bernard. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, they lost Tyrell Dodson. He went to Seattle. So maybe this is their like Tyrell Dodson kind of signing. And hey, even Tyrell Dodson got some snaps in Buffalo and made the most of it a couple times, at least a couple games. So Deion Jones, maybe another year removed off injury, maybe another offseason to get healthy helps him, and he's just 30. He'll be 30 next year. So he's definitely not hanging on by a thread, but let's see if health and physicality help him get back to on top of his game, because he was absolutely LB1 not too long ago. He had 2 seasons with over 135 tackles.
Yeah, I mean, he has the potential for sure, but I think he is just more of a veteran presence. Just kind of help that team out, because again, I think the Milano thing is definitely something to consider for sure. Excuse me. So Terrell Edmunds got signed, which I thought was a good move for the Jaguars. Jaguars secondary definitely has some concerns. I actually like this move a lot. They definitely had some past concerns last season when you watch them, and I think this upcoming season is something they're trying to fill out. They're trying to figure out who's going to be a good replacement, and I thought the Edmunds signing was a pretty good signing for this offseason. Edmunds didn't really do what I thought he was going to do in Pittsburgh. I don't know why. I don't know what it was. I had high hopes because his brother does amazing stuff, whether he was Buffalo or Chicago. But I thought this was a good signing for Jaguars because I think they do need to shore up that secondary. And I think maybe he has some fantasy potential. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? One thing about Terrell Edmunds is that he was never like that, big play type of guy. He was never like getting, sacks or making huge splash plays, but he was a solid tackler. He missed a couple tackles, but look in the box score, he was a safe 5-6 tackle guy. So definitely somebody, if you're in a league where you're playing multiple defensive backs, maybe starting 2 or 3 defensive backs, and he gets that role. That's the question now. Is he going to get that role? I mean, they lost their best safety in Rashaad Jenkins goes to Seattle. They have Andre Cisco right now. I looked at their depth chart. They have Antonio Johnson as their second starter there. So neither of those guys really. I think Cisco's kind of penciled in at this point, but who is Johnson, right? So now you bring in a vet who you're looking to maybe get some backup snaps. Maybe that Antonio Johnson's not the truth, and now Edmunds is all of a sudden in the starting lineup, and at that point, I think that there's at least a safe tackle floor for him. And when you're looking at defensive backs and IDP, I think that's the one bankable stat you can count on is tackles. So definitely not somebody who I'm looking to start the season with, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if week 7, week 8, we're at a point now that it might be an injury, maybe that Terrell Edmunds is outplaying Antonio Johnson, that he gets the nod. So this is definitely in deeper dynasty or deeper IDP leagues, a name to not forget about.
Yeah, I mean, again, I thought it was a good move. They need it. They need to figure out their secondary. That was definitely a weakness for them last season. That held them back a few times from actually having a really successful, season.
And Cisco was there last year too. Yikes.
Yeah, it was rough. That's Jacksonville is a weird team, right? They can be a playoff team. They can be someone who can be a potential threat to some of these other AFC teams, but they just seem to falter in some areas, and secondary was definitely one of them. The last signing for a defensive player this offseason, this past month or so, was Bud Dupree signing with the Chargers. Not sure where that plays or how that's going to play out, but Bud Dupree, again, former Steeler, another player that I felt had flashes, showed signs. And when you think Chargers, you've got Bosa there, Mac, like you've got some players that have kind of already established. So I'm not really sure where Bud kind of plays into this factor because he is definitely the edge rusher, linebacker, tweener type of player. So I'm not really sure how that signing goes, but maybe the Chargers are looking at getting rid of Mac or Bosa. I mean, I know there was always that rumor this offseason that one of them was going to get traded, but nothing really happened. So maybe there's a reason why he was brought in for that, or they're just looking for some depth. I don't think he necessarily has any fantasy relevancy at all right now. Unless some injuries happen, he's still on the roster and he kind of comes in, but he's definitely a name you should at least consider and think about, because again, who knows what ends up happening if one of these players did get moved, or an injury does happen, he ends up being the backup. So he's still somebody that could have some potential.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both, bringing in veteran presence and depth, but at the same time, both those names, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, these are guys who have dealt with injuries in their career, both getting older in age. So I think it's good signing. He was somebody who I think he led the Falcons in sacks last year. So not saying that's a high standard the year they had last year, but at the same time, it's definitely somebody who's capable. If there's an injury there, Bosa, you can almost count on him getting injured, unfortunately. But if one of those guys get injured, I expect Bud Dupree to be the next guy up, and that's what he was brought there for. And I think it's good veteran, and somebody who can definitely make a fantasy impact if they are playing the right snaps, playing starter snaps. So definitely a name to not forget about as well, Bud Dupree.
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because you just don't know what they're going to end up doing this offseason. So essentially, that's it as far as the free agent signings that happened this past month. Again, some names that might have some value in your dynasty team, or maybe one might squeak in to be a nice little redraft pick late into your redraft. So hopefully that stuff is helpful for you guys. Again, the schedule is going to be fun. There's a lot of craziness going on. So hopefully the information we gave you is going to help with some of your strategies, especially when it comes to redraft and kind of figure out what's going to happen this upcoming season. So Johnny, anything you got going on, anything coming up with, IDP or anything like that you've got coming up this week?
Yeah, I got to get in touch with Nate Cheat. I got to get in touch. We're going to do some IDP plus rankings show with him and Brandon Lee TV. We should be doing linebackers, combined rookies, and vets. So that'll be a fun one. And also maybe looking at running backs, rookies and vets. So looking at how those rookies impact the rankings as a whole. I can tell you a sneak preview. I don't see a whole lot of noise being made by rookie linebackers this year in my rankings for combined. I think Peyton Wilson, is the highest I have ranked so far. So Not a huge IDP rookie enthusiast this year, but hey, that's why it's the NFL. Some guys, some Ivan Pace is going to be the next one out there. So stick with us. Get that dollar subscription. Make sure you're rocking with us, and we'll help you find that diamond in the rough. And make sure you go and check your settings, because those weeks we talked about, we're going to have bye weeks. It's going to be an unprecedented year this year. Maybe make a case. If you're a commissioner, if you're a player in the league, make a case of why that trade deadline should be extended, why it should be moved. Check out what it is. It might be week 10, might be early. Take a look at your settings, whether it be for your own draft purposes, for the league purpose, and stay on top of things as far as the league settings and your team. So, good luck to you this year, and hopefully the schedule doesn't throw you in every which way.
I don't need luck. It's going to be amazing season for my rosters. So again, make sure you guys are following Johnny. He's Johnny freaking F1 on X. Follow me, AVG Joes _FF. You guys can follow all our craziness that we put out there on the Twitter space. Again, make sure you guys are watching his show. Make sure you guys check out all the articles we've got out there for you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys.